So it has definitely been a hard week. I mean, definitely a hard week for me. Um, been thinking about this situation in Israel all week, and then with more intensity and more intensity and more intensity as the week went on. And now, when we are like after the fact, I felt it's very important to give this class because the Lubavitcher Rebbe says, when it hurts, you cry. Now, when the Rebbe said that, it was actually in terms of the Lebanon war in Israel that we learned at Lent shortly after October 7th. We spent a number of weeks discussing the Lebanon War and the very eerie parallelisms. The travesty, the sellouts, the loss of life for seeming no gain because they were too cowed to finish the job and eliminate the terrorists. Remember, instead of conquering and eliminating, they let them just go to another country. Oh, we're getting them out of Lebanon. Right. So the PLO went to another country, regrouped, and continued. So when it hurts, you cry. So I'm really dedicating this class to crying out, and to hopefully all of us crying out, inspiring everyone here to cry out. We need to cry out. We need to cry out to people, and we need to cry out to God. So before you begin, what do you begin with? There's so many different things that I think are really important to share. I'm going to start with something that maybe isn't on anyone's head here, but might be. And people might say, like, what am I talking about? Why am I in pain over what's going on? We're talking here about freeing captives. And we know freeing captives is a commandment. It's something godly. We're supposed to free Jews that are taken hostage. Doesn't that like supersede anything? They always are fundraising money. There's always these campaigns for Jews that get caught in, I don't know, a prison here, or a jail here, and have to get out. So what's going on? Why is there pain over something as beautiful as freeing the captives and as emotional as seeing those 3 women that were released, which was, of course, very, very, very heart-wrenching and touching and emotional. So what's the pain? Well, let's start with the facts. No, what is happening now is not what Jewish law says. Yes, we are supposed to free captives, but it says in a Mishnah, in the Talmud Gittin, on page 45, if you want to look it up, we do not redeem captives more than their normative worth, because the Talmud says, Tikkun Olam, for the rectification of the world, for the world to function in normative function. We do not pay more than the real time worth, so to speak, of a captive. And Maimonides, this is in Talmud, this was in the Talmud Gittin, page 45, folio 45. Maimonides says this also. He paskins. Paskins means he says this as a Jewish law, actually in his section on the laws of gifts to the poor, discussing this, like we're supposed to be gifting a poor here, their freedom. How much are we supposed to gift them? Not if it's demanded more than the normative worth of a captive, meaning this is a woman of such and such age. How much is normally that woman sold for? That's what you pay, not more. This is a man, this is a child, this is the gender, these are the skills. What does such a slave normally go for? That's what you pay, not more. So Maimonides says this is the law in the laws of the gifts for the poor, chapter 8, the 12th law. Also in the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, in the section Yoreh Deah, Siman 252, Seif 4, quotes the Mishnah, quotes what we said from the Mishnah, from Gittin, and then explains it, meaning the Talmud, you might not say, is an authoritative law. Shulchan Aruch is the Code of Jewish. This is what we're accepting as Jewish law. So takes the words of the Mishnah, says, yes, this is Jewish law. We do not pay for a captive more than their normative worth. Why? It gives a very logical reason. So enemies won't be encouraged to take more captives because they see there's so much they can get for it. When we give so much more than it's worthwhile to go into this business and take captives, take hostages. Is the worth of 33 people normatively 1,900 terrorists, 450 murderers, and giving Hamas control again of Gaza? That's not normative worth. So this is not according to Jewish law. Even in money then, before this, right? Netanyahu very generously and in a way that we would say doesn't hurt us, was offering $5 million for anyone that would bring out a hostage from Gaza. $5 million and safe passage to anywhere you want in the world. Now, no one took him up on the deal. Maybe they're like, what are you talking about, safe passage? We do this. They're going to murder me wherever I go. But again, according to Torah law, no. Even the money could be encouraging them to take us, to take any Jew in the entire world as hostage. We're very valuable bait. That's a big problem. And Hanukkah, in December time of 1976, the Lubavitcher Rebbe sent a letter. He quoted a verse. This verse is from Numbers, from the Midbar. The verse says, this people is a people that will dwell alone and will not be recognized among the nations. That's Numbers 23:9. And the Rebbe writes, this is a letter. This was from 1976. It could have been written today. The sooner Jewish leaders and Jews realize they cannot rely on the kindness of the nations, the sooner we realize that, the better will be our chances to dwell in security. It's vitally necessary that Jews everywhere turn their hearts and minds inward and strengthen their identification with our great historic spiritual heritage, which has been the real unifying force of our Jewish people and has preserved our people throughout the ages, a tiny minority in a hostile world. So the Rebbe wrote that in 1976. If we didn't realize before, and it's been quite many years since 1976, I think for many of us, what we learned beyond anything else is never trust, so to speak, our friends, especially never trust politicians. In this past Saturday's Torah portion, Shmos, again in 1776, the Lubavitcher Rebbe speaking on the Torah portion, where here Joseph had been the king in Egypt for 80 years. Joseph saved the country from famine. And the verse says, well, a new Pharaoh came up, a new king came up who didn't know Joseph. And that's like a little bizarre. How could somebody not know Joseph? They don't know anything that happened in Egypt in the past years. And our sages actually say, well, some say it was a new king, some say no, it was the same old Pharaoh. He just became new in his opinions and mindset. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe says on this, that even if we have friends in high places, at any time your friends can turn on you. Just like Pharaoh didn't know Joseph. Joseph ruled Egypt for 80 years. Suddenly there's a new king who doesn't know Joseph. So the Rebbe says, a new king can arise, someone who doesn't know you. Or your former friends can turn on you. Our security is not from the kings, is not from the friends in high places. Our security is directly from God. On a physical plane, obviously everything is God and everything goes back to him, and we'll definitely talk about that. But on the physical plane, the bad guy here is Trump. And so many of us pin such great hopes on Trump as a savior. When he gets in power, then we'll be able to get really tough on Hamas. Biden's not letting. And every time Biden cut back on arms to Israel, Trump got so many donations from Jewish sources. And, when he's going to get in, they won't be forcing us to give all these trucks of supplies that just go straight into Hamas's coffers, and et cetera, et cetera. Trump's not our friend helping us destroy Hamas to protect us. He stopped the war for his benefit, at our detriment, and that's always the truth. Any thoughts before I keep going? Any reflections on this? Any of your thoughts?
Cyril, we don't rely on Trump, but isn't it better to have a leader of America who is better for Israel, for Jews?
What he did wasn't good.
Like what?
This wasn't good what he did. He did something very bad. He put tremendous pressure on Netanyahu. Which is why Netanyahu, listen, I could be wrong, but it definitely seems that Netanyahu suddenly gave in. This deal was not a new deal. This is a deal that Biden proposed a long time ago. And many different tweaks happened to the deal. And many times, thank God, Hamas walked away from the deal. But Netanyahu has always had a few red lines he wouldn't cross. And then suddenly Netanyahu sends his envoy and says, hey, before January 20th, this deal has to happen and you have to give in. I don't know if it was bribes, if it was threats, what coercion happened. I don't know any secrets. I don't know what was really said behind closed doors, but suddenly Netanyahu is agreeing to this deal. So again, everything's God, and God could have still stopped it. Hamas could have walked away from it like they walked away many times over this past year, even though it's an amazing deal for them, but Hamas could still have just torpedoed the deal, and they didn't. So obviously, ultimately, it goes back to God. But I'm just saying, as a player, who knows? Maybe Trump's going to turn around and be amazing because God runs the world. The hearts of kings are in the hand of God. He could turn around and be the best for us. I'm not saying not. What I'm saying is not to trust, not to believe in, not to rely on. None of these
But
people out there are doing it for us. Only Jews are going to do it for us. Faina?
yeah, but it's not about Trump, right? Is continuing war better? I hear what you're saying, but is continuing the war better? For who is it better?
Was continuing the war better?
Yeah.
Because what they did basically is basically, Hamas won. They came at us October 7th, they murdered, they burnt alive, they raped, they pillaged, and they said, we're going to do it again. They said it publicly. I saw a CNN clip, It's not like whispers. Publicly, we're going to do it again, and we're going to do it again. And after fighting them for 15 and a half months, we said, okay, we're stopping to fight you. So they just got their power again. Yes, we destroyed some tunnels, we destroyed some buildings. There's plenty of people that their hearts bleed for them, and we'll send all this money officially for rebuilding, really for tunnels, and really for what they need to build up their weaponry again.
But I mean, it's a very difficult question. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors, right? Officially, the war is over. We don't know what really is going on. I mean, it's a very controversial and difficult question. I don't think there is like a right or wrong answer to this.
I totally hear what you're saying. Obviously, it's a very complex situation. I'm simplifying something very complex. I'm just looking at it very simply. There's nothing more important than Jewish lives. World opinion is not as important as Jewish lives. If America likes us, it's not as important as Jewish lives. Nothing is as important as Jewish lives. They are going to free 1,900 terrorists, 450 of whom have life sentences, multiple life sentences. What does that mean? That means they killed so many people. They were responsible for so many terrorist attacks that we're going to keep you in prison for multiple life sentences. Well, now they're being freed by Gilad Shalit, where 1,000 plus hostages, terrorists were freed for Gilad Shalit. The army is very good at following and tracking information. They said it right now. The Shin Bet, the Israelis CIA said 82% of those 1,000 plus terrorists that were freed for Gilad Shalit, 82% went back to being terrorists. So 18% didn't, and 82% did, which means murdered many more people. The CIA of Israel said, no question, they said it officially. I'm not, again, I don't know secrets. I know what they say publicly. For sure, freeing this number of terrorists, they will murder more people than the 33 we're getting. That's what they're saying. That's what the Israeli government is saying. We're going to get 33, and more than 33 people will die if the statistics say the same. If we're freeing 1,900 terrorists, and roughly 82% will go back to being terrorists, they're going to kill more than 33 people before they get killed or they get arrested again. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm not being complicated. I'm looking at Jewish lives. Freeing 1,900 terrorists means you're putting at risk many, many more people than 33. Giving Hamas back Gaza? Did they give Hamas back Gaza? Well, I mean, they'll fight it out with the PA. But controlling Gaza and not having Israel control Gaza means that Gaza reverts to what it was before October 7th, right at our borders, designed to destroy us. That's what Hamas wants. That's their official policy, as is the policy of Hezbollah. They're all saying the same thing. Again, none of them are making any secrets about it. Yesterday, what were they chanting in the streets of Gaza? Death to the Jews. Again, publicly, on TV. I mean, we're on TV. It's viral. Death to the Jews. Death to the Jews. They're not
What's the
even
solution
pretending to
on this?
say, oh, we repented, we changed, we feel bad, let's be good neighbors. It was so nice of you to give us the land of Gaza. I mean, we gave them that land. You know, it's so nice. You're giving us electricity. You're giving us water. It's so nice of you. Let's be friends. They're not saying that. They're saying death to the Jews. So is the war better? Yeah. Because if they kept fighting, if they resume fighting, they might after 6 weeks, they might not. They might be able to, they might not be able to. We'll see what God wants. But if they resume fighting after 6 weeks and they're strong, that language Hamas understands. The only language terrorists understand is strength. Any concession, terrorists view as weakness. Who orchestrated October 7th? Sinwar. Who's Sinwar? One of those 1,000+ terrorists that were released because of Gilad Shalit. I saw something that I thought was so poignant and heart-wrenching and sort of sums up the whole thing. Someone posted a picture of his son. It looks like a little boy in the picture, maybe like 3. And he writes, it's in Hebrew, that he writes that he remembers the day Gilad Shalit was released. And he and his son, this little boy, we were waiting. We were so happy and excited waiting for Gilad Shalit's release. And this little boy of mine was murdered by one of those terrorists that were exchanged for Gilad Shalit. So that's the point. The point is, in the end of the day, we have to think about Jewish lives. We have to be like simplistic and think about Jewish lives. It's a complicated situation. It's a very complicated situation. And I think if we let ourselves get complicated, we sort of get stuck in the complexities. And if we just think simply Jewish lives, we have to protect and value Jewish lives. You can say, but these 33 people are also Jewish lives. They absolutely are. And any operation the IDF does with their version of the CIA to save and rescue is amazing and heroic and should have all of God's salvation. But not to do something that endangers another 8 million Jewish lives that are now in Israel. Right now, the terrorists they're planning on releasing, these 1,900, they have already, that's why they're in prison, have killed more people together, these 1,900, than were murdered on October 7th. That's how many they killed, and that's why they got into prison. But what you're saying is true. It's complicated. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on this?
Hi, Cyril and everyone. I 100% agree with you, 100%. I was heartbroken when I heard about this agreement, and I don't understand why. Why they repeat this vicious cycle again and again and again. And again, I feel very bad for the families and hostages. And I'm so happy they're getting home, but it's just insane what they do, what they did. It's just insane. And like you said, it's going to cost them so much more. This is not right. And I'm so disappointed if Trump pushed it. I mean, he obviously did. And why Netanyahu agreed to this. It's just insane and totally it's just heartbreaking.
Because Israel, it depends on America.
That's Leah. That's what we have to learn. We don't depend on America. We depend on God. And if we're sticking with God, America, you know what the Lubavitcher Rebbe says many, many, many times? Do what's right. America really, in the end, would like you to do what's right, but they can't always tell you that. Many times, like for example, happened in Syria, when Israel just went after Assad fled, and they spent like 2 weeks destroying all of the armament they could in Syria. Officially, of course, that was completely wrong and illegal, and how could they do that? And unofficially, nobody stopped them because everyone was thrilled that they were doing it.
No, because everyone else was busy with something else.
I
Not
think
because
at the
they
end of the
thrilled.
day, no free country wants what could potentially be an ISIS country to have their hands on that armament. I don't think
And for
anyone noticed what Israel was doing. They were
But
doing
at
it
the
very
same time,
publicly.
for those hostage families, you know,
100%.
these people, they're not numbers, okay?
100%.
And luckily, we're not in their shoes, you know?
Absolutely.
It's very difficult to put themselves. to their
100%.
shoes.
I also looked at
We
the
don't
kids
even
coming
know.
back. Of course, my heart went out to those mothers and families and the girls, and just, I don't want to know what they have been through in the past 15 and a half
But
months. Of
to win
course.
Hamas, you have to kill all of them. All, I don't know, like 1.5 million. You have to kill all of them. Can Israel kill all of them?
To win Hamas, you have to take their land. That's what you have to do. You have to go in there. What Israel's been doing until now is sort of like raiding, meaning they go in, they take over, they destroy tunnels, they search out for IEDs and things like that, and then they leave. It's like a raid. They go in, they go out. They go in, they go out.
So
They
how many Jews has to be there to control 2 million population or 1.5 million population?
if they would go in there and start taking land, all that land of Gaza was ours. It's not such a big piece of land, but it was all ours. That's another political Israeli catastrophe that is so dirty, I don't want to talk about it. What happened and why suddenly we gifted away this land and gifted away to people that are making a terrorist base at our doorstep. But if we took the land and controlled the land, not raiding it, controlled it, so Hamas saw their power was shrinking because they don't have that land anymore. They lost it. Now they lost more. Now they lost more. Israel's saying, we're taking this over. Just like Israel's saying in Syria. Israel's saying, I mean, they might get kicked out, but they definitely want to keep the land that they took. They want it as a barrier of protection. We need protection. Now, I'm not in charge of the IDF. I'm not a military person. But I do know that when you show terrorist strength, that's the only language they understand. We saw this by the Intifada. We saw this by the second Intifada. Every time they see strength, they respond and they get scared because in the end they are probably cowards. But whenever they see what they call weakness, we can call it a moral strength because we're such moral people, and of course we're Jewish people, we're very moral. So because we're very moral, we're going to give everything to save these people, what no other country would do. True. And all of that, the Arabs call weakness. And when they see strength, that scares them. And that cows them. And that they back off of. And that's what we've seen historically. If you look in the whole history of Israel, every time we were strong, they backed down. And every time we danced to America's tune, and we didn't finish the job, as happened countlessly in almost every war. We didn't finish the job. We got scared of, not of the Arabs, we got scared of America, and we didn't finish the job. They're back at us. It might take 6 months. It might take 2 years. It might take 3 years. It could take 3 years till they can build up their tunnels and their resources. So we say, we don't care what happens in 3 years from now. We don't care how many people will be murdered then. We don't care that there'll be another October 7th that they tell us they want to do. It wasn't an original thing, October 7th. Hezbollah was planning the same thing in a much greater measure. When we conquered the tunnels of Hezbollah, a few kilometers from Israel's border, they have so much more there ready to go and massacre. They had maps, just like Hamas had. They had listed all the important Jews, including the license plates of their cars. What happened? God didn't let. God didn't let. So no, I agree with Fiona 100%, with Faina 100%. It's not simple. It's complicated. These 33 people, and we're saying 33. There's another 66 besides these 33 or 60 some. They're people. 100% they're people. 100% we have to do everything for them, but not at the risk of Jewish lives. There's 8 million Jews that are being put at risk. No, that's not what Torah demands, which means it's like we can't be kinder than God. God says don't do it, but we're kinder. God says don't do it, but we say no, these are people, not numbers, and we're going to be kinder than God. You can't be kinder than God. You can't be more compassionate than God. God is the ultimate in compassion and the ultimate in kindness. If God is saying through Jewish law, don't pay more than the normative value of a life, that's kindness. Why? Why is that kind? I don't care. I'm rich. I'll pay. Because they'll just take more. There was a very famous historical situation with a very, very great Jewish rabbi named Reb Meir of Rothenburg. He lived in Germany. He was the leader of German Jewry at that time. And the king of Germany, if you remember, in the Middle Ages, remembering your history, the kings in those days were fairly weak. The nobles were very strong. At that time, all the nobles in Germany, and probably all over Europe, were taxing every Jew. The king of Germany decided he was also going to tax every Jew. Every Jew is a serf of the state, so he can tax every Jew. So now, this is in the 1200s, the Jews in Germany have a double tax. They have to pay a tax to the noble, they have to pay a tax to the king. It was too much, they couldn't handle it. So the Jews started leaving Germany to go to another country. Maybe they'll have one tax there, but not two. Reb Meir of Rothenburg, who was basically the leader of German Jewry, he left with his family, he left with his students, he had many students. And when he left, somebody recognized him and identified him to the German authorities. Now, I guess officially it was a crime to leave. I mean, everybody was leaving. They didn't stop them, but this is an important Jew. So they took him hostage. Taking someone hostage is not a new concept. They took him hostage. And he was very, very revered by the German people. And they raised 25,000, could you imagine those days? 25,000 silver marks to release him. And Reb Meir of Rothenburg said, no, I don't let. You cannot buy me out. They said, why? He said, because then every rabbi in Germany is going to have the same situation. Anytime they need money, and these people always need money, they make parties, they live an extravagant lifestyle, they need money. Simple solution. Take an important rabbi, throw him in a fortress, and then look at money in their coffers for a few more months. He lived in prison for the next 7 years. He died in prison. They still wouldn't release the body. Not releasing the body again, it's not a new phenomenon. 14 years after his death, a wealthy Jew paid for the ransom of his body. I don't know if the Jew was right or wrong. It was very disputed because Reb Meir of Rothenburg said, don't pay anything for me. That's why nobody did for 14 years. Very shortly after he paid the money, this man also died, and the two are buried together in the Jewish cemetery in Worms. So, yes, it's complex. It's very emotional. We are very kind, ethical, moral people, and therefore we do see the pain of, we pray for them every day, we say psalms for them, we give charity for them. We feel their pain. We 100% want their release, but we don't want Jewish people endangered. And not maybe something will happen. The Israeli government is saying more people are going to die from these 1,900 than the 33 they're getting back. The Israeli government is saying that. Like it's not a question in their mind. Why are they doing it? I don't know. Meaning what pressures were put on Netanyahu? I have no clue. I don't know what he was promised. I don't know what he was bribed. I don't know what he was threatened. It could be as Leah's saying. It's just a very simple thing. Before a previous time when they were fighting in Gaza for a few weeks, it was actually right before Obama's inauguration, and he sent a message to Netanyahu, I don't want any war on my inauguration. Get out. Got out then. No, that was a different situation. That was a different war. You could say they had different goals, but America said something and they complied. So it could be, as Leah is saying, very simple. No subversive threats and no great bribes. It's just Trump is saying, this is it, and you have to listen to me. And that was the point of why I quoted that letter from the Rebbe to begin this. As long as we believe our security comes from the world, we will never be secure. Our security does not come from America. Our security comes from God. Say, but what if America doesn't like us? It's very pragmatic. If America needs us, they'll be there for us. If they don't need us, they won't be there for us in any situation. So we can see here already like different opinions on both sides, and obviously it makes sense. And obviously, how are the people in Israel feeling? Very conflicted. Very conflicted. Obviously, scared. Obviously, feeling the joy of the ones coming back and feeling fear. In general, the people that are the most obviously screaming against this deal, there have been countless protests throughout Israel against this deal, countless protests, including till now. Chabad, very much, because this is, the Rebbe says, never bargain with terrorists, never give in to terrorists. Giving in to terrorists, give them the ability to terrorize. It empowers them. when you talk to the terrorists, forget about give them anything. When you're talking to the terrorists as if they're human beings across the table from you, that's legitimizing them. Why are we talking to them as if this is people that we're talking to? These are barbaric villains. They're not people we are having a dialogue with. It's not bartering. It's not an exchange of war prisoners. These are innocent men, women, and babies. And these are murderers. Who else? All the settlers, especially those living in the area of Yehud and Shomron, what the world calls the West Bank, where hundreds of these terrorists that were already terrorists before and then got more radicalized in prison, they're returning to. On the first day, all the terrorists, that's where they went. They went to the West Bank and they went to East Jerusalem. A number of the terrorists are from East Jerusalem. Once you're in East Jerusalem, you have access to the entire Israel. So the settlers are very scared, very concerned, very worried, very, very upset. Who else, in terms of groups that are very concerned? The soldiers and the reservists. They saw their friends die. They might be crippled for life. Their friends might be crippled for life. And they're saying, for what? For what did we give up our lives? For what did we give up our health? Why did we do this? Why have we been fighting for 15 and a half months just to give it all back to them? Just to give them an opportunity to do this all again? Who else is in enormous pain now over this deal? Well, very obviously, the families of the victims of those 1,900 terrorists. They've been the ones that have been posting very emotionally pictures of their loved ones that these 1,900 murdered viciously, some of them. Again, not all of them are murderers. Not all of them are murderers. You can be a terrorist and not have been caught for murdering. Of course, I'm saying at least 450 are multiple murderers, multiple sentenced for life, many of them sentenced for multiple lifetimes. The families of those victims posting pictures of their loved ones that these people murdered, writing the stories of their loved ones, and the people who fear the potential murderers and fear Hamas getting back in power, getting back in Gaza, having another October 7th. As I said, Sinwar was one of those prisoners released for Gilad Shalit. And what did he say? Again, he said this. I know no secrets. Anything I know, anybody here can know. He said, what did he learn when he was in Israeli prison? He learned how soft, how stupid the Jews are, that they will do anything to get back their people. So we have a great situation. We do what we want. We make sure we take some captives besides the ones we do everything else they did to. And then we're good to go. We're good to go. The Jews are so soft. The Jews are so stupid. So anyone, it's interesting, I saw one of the ministers, they had a vote. And of course, it was very known people that would vote for and people that would vote against. But it was surprising some of the people that voted against, not enough voted against, obviously. It was a clear majority, very few voted against. But one of the ones that voted against, it was sort of a surprise from Netanyahu's own party, if you know how, probably for you it's easier to understand than for an American, how the Israeli system works. But one of the ministers in Netanyahu's own party voted against, and he wrote afterwards, he can't sleep. He can't sleep thinking of these terrorists going now in Yehuda and Shomron in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. He just can't think of how enormously dangerous it is for the people. The Lubavitcher Rebbe always, consistently meaning there was never wavering, there was never a situation that was an exception to the rule. In every situation, and as I've said, and this is not unfortunately a new situation, it's the most horrific situation we had, but it's not a new situation. Consistently, the Rebbe was against any deals. He said, you can't talk to terrorists. You can't bargain with them. You can't negotiate with them. Who are they that you're giving them that power and that credence? Just talking to them, forget about giving them anything, encourages and empowers them to terrorize. Everything we're doing now, and I understand the complexities and I understand the pain, and I literally say psalms and give charity for the hostages every single day. But everything we're doing now makes it more appealing and easy. Do whatever you want. Take some Jews hostage. All will be well. Any thoughts on this again before I continue? Any other thoughts based on what I said or based on what people, different voices said different things? Any other thoughts?
Why Israel doesn't execute murderous terrorists? They executed Eichmann. How is it different?
That is exactly what I was thinking. And you know what? Exactly what the Rebbe says. If you heard what Rivka said, I was literally thinking this like all day today. I didn't think about this before, but today I was thinking this very strongly. Rivka said, why are we taking these murderers? People, I don't want to say I could share. I can't even talk about what some of these people did. I couldn't even read it. It was so horrific. And to think they're being free. Can you imagine what people did to be sentenced for multiple lifetimes? And what are we doing then? Then we keep them in our prison, feed them 3 meals a day, have the bed that they're taking up, and just wait. What does the multiple lifetime mean in Israel? That you're going to be in prison for 10 years? What does it mean a multiple lifetime? What are your friends going to do and then you'll get out? It was very interesting because Lubavitcher Rebbe said this. He said this to an Israeli person in the Israeli government. He said, these terrorists are coming to kill you. They come to kill us. That's what the terrorists are doing. Why are you not killing them? And it's interesting. I thought it was interesting. So Lubavitcher Rebbe, okay, he's sitting in Brooklyn. He doesn't understand reality. So he just thinks very simply, literally. He said, you are mistaken when you arrest and imprison terrorists. They came to kill and they should be killed. And then the Rebbe said, you will end up paying dearly. And the Rebbe said, exactly. You want to say he's prophetic, or you could have figured this out too. You will end up paying dearly when they demand the release of these killers in a prisoner exchange. The Rebbe didn't say this today, and the Rebbe didn't say this last week. Is it prophecy? Is it a very godly person? Maybe. Or maybe it's very obvious that that's what's going to happen. So that was the Lubavitcher Rebbe. David Friedman, Trump's advisor and the former ambassador to Israel during Trump's previous term, he came out saying, he wrote it, Israel should use the death penalty on terrorists because we're holding murderers for future release. To hold murderers for future release is suicidal. So yeah, Rivka, I was literally thinking exactly that.
Unfortunately, Supreme Court of Israel is progressive left. It's very, very sad that we have enemies within. That's what we have.
So what can we do? What can we do? So I said there's things we can do. This, as I said, I'm crying, and hopefully you're going to also cry. But there are things we can do, very powerful things we can do. First is don't trust man. God willing, God should make Trump turn around and be our biggest advocate. But that's because of God. Don't trust man. Trust God. Don't trust man. So point one is don't trust man. And point two is trust God. God is the only power. He's the only ruler. Everything is him. As I said, in the end of the day, Hamas could have walked away from this deal also if God wanted. They did it plenty of times before. Throughout our history in Israel, so many times in the past years, the Israeli government wanted to give away land to the Arabs. Like, be our friends, we'll be nice to you, then you'll be nice to us, right? Right? You'll like us. If we give you enough, you'll like us, right? Isn't that how people behave? And so many times, thank God, the Arabs wouldn't take it because they wanted more. So God runs the show. Trust God, turn to God, demand from God, complain to God, scream to God, pray to God. Nobody else has power. No, Trump doesn't have power, and no, Hamas doesn't have power, and no, Netanyahu doesn't have power. As I said, Hamas has so much power. Well, Hezbollah was planning something far worse. And I don't mean planning like in a theoretical sense. Planning like in these tunnels a few kilometers away from our border cities. They had everything ready. They had the trucks ready. They had their ammunition ready. When the Israelis saw it, they said it would have made October 7th look like a picnic in the park. That's what the Israeli government said. based on everything they found in those tunnels a few kilometers away from the border cities. And what happened? God didn't let it. Didn't happen. By the Gulf War, before the Gulf War started, everybody was scared. If you remember, I'm sure we're all old enough to remember. People were scared because they said, oh, Saddam Hussein, he has biological warfare, he has chemical warfare. It was rumors. And nothing ever happened during the war. So it was rumors. When the war was ending, the Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote, or really over at that time, or right at the end, the Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote a letter saying, that we're all thankful for the miracles we've seen in this Gulf War. 39 Scud missiles fell. Nobody was killed from them. The Rebbe said there are far greater miracles that you don't know about. Far greater miracles. So what did we not know about? What was classified information and came out a few years later? That Saddam Hussein had biological and chemical warfare. He did have it. And before the war, he had planes loaded with biological and chemical warheads aimed to Israel. And he told that department of the Air Force, if anything happens to me, send these planes to Israel. Anything happens to me. The second you don't know where I am, send these planes to Israel. And it was very interesting because in the beginning of the war, America kept trying to get Saddam Hussein, and they couldn't. It looked like God wasn't being kind to us, so to speak. It looked like our bad. No, it was our good, because that's when this order was still in effect. For some unknown reason, unknown, no explanation, inexplicable, towards the end of the war, Saddam Hussein told them to unload the planes. They did. And shortly after that, he was captured, but the order was no longer in effect. So the biological and chemical warheads never went to Israel. Why not? Because God didn't let. Makes no sense. It makes no sense. We know the facts, but the facts don't make any sense. What makes sense is there's a God. So don't trust man, but trust God. Turn to God. He is the power. He does make things happen. It's a lost situation. It's not a lost situation. The whole thing could turn around today, tonight, tomorrow. The whole situation could turn around. How? I don't know. I have to speculate and give God creative ideas. He'll do far better than I can think of. Trust God, believe in God, turn to God. He has the power. He can turn the whole situation around. Third point, serving God, learning the Torah, keeping the commandments. That is our strength. So add in your learning of Torah. Add in your keeping of the commandments, especially if you can get children to do it. Since this happened, every day I've been trying to say at least one chapter of Psalms with Beryl. It's not easy, but so far I'm not saying I'm committing to life, but so far I've done it with him every day. Why? Because there's a verse that says, which means, loosely translated, from the mouths of babes, from the mouth of the young children, that will come forth the strength to destroy the enemy. So anything a Jewish child does, any extra act of Torah, of prayer, of psalms, of charity, any extra commandment, that's so powerful. And anything we do is so powerful. We are one body. Why are we screaming? Because we don't care about the Jewish lives? Because we care about the Jewish lives. We are one body. When we strengthen our service of God, it directly helps the Jews in Israel. Every Jew in Israel is directly affected by our increase, whatever our increase is. Whatever you're doing, God is so glad if you do more. You're doing a little, do a little more, God is ecstatic. You're doing more, do more, God is so happy. And that's our power. So if you feel frustrated or sad or hurt or scared, and you could still even think the deal was a good idea and feel frustrated, sad, hurt, and scared, it could be a good idea. It doesn't take away all the fears for Jewish lives and the Jewish land. So know that our actions make the difference. In other words, it's easy to feel hopeless and helpless, like it's horrible, and what can we do? If you think the deal is a good idea, it's still horrible. You can still think it's horrible. You can still understand the danger to the Jews in Israel. You understand that danger, even if you think the deal is a good idea. You understand that danger. What can we do? We could do a lot. We could give something to God and say, this is to protect the Jew in Israel. This is to protect the Jews in Israel. So much tragedy came out since October 7th. and many, many, many miracle stories. Who knows who was doing what that created those miracle stories? Like, if you could think, if you knew your extra good deed could save a life in Israel, what would you do? What would you choose to strengthen? So if you feel a passion, obviously some people tonight expressed a lot of passion, channel that passion into action. Channel the passion into action. Do something. Doing something makes a difference. And the fourth point, keep strengthening your belief in God. It's all Him. He loves every Jew more than we do. He loves the land of Israel more than we do. He has all the power. He can turn this around in a second. I mean, think of Purim, right? What was supposed to happen Purim? Genocide in one day. World Jewry. There's no place to run, because wherever you run, they're going to kill you all that day. We have all the cards in our hand. We're finally solving the Jewish problem. And God didn't let. God didn't let. Hanukkah. Yeah, we all know the Hanukkah story. At that time, the army the Jews were fighting was the strongest army in that world. And these were a handful of untrained, unarmed priests. And then a few more Jews joined, and a few more Jews joined. But they kept sending larger and larger and crazy larger armies against us. And we somehow kept winning. Made no sense. But that was the will of God. God didn't let. I said Saddam Hussein with his chemical and biological warfare, God didn't let. Hezbollah planning their October 7th, God didn't let. So we are not powerless. We are very, very, very powerful. It's interesting. It says, this is my fifth point here of what we can do. It says every nation is controlled by a ministering angel, except the Jewish people. Our relationship is directly with God. But every other nation is controlled by an angel. Every nation. The bigger the nation, we're told, the bigger the angel that controls them. And the hearts of the leaders is directly connected to that angel. When we cry out, we're told as we cry out, the angel hears. You know, why should we cry out? No one's listening anyway, right? Who are we crying out to? No one's listening. What difference does it make? Nobody's listening to us. Politicians just play their games. The Lubavitcher Rebbe says, when we publicly tell the truth, the ministering angel hears it. And they're angels, so they know the truth. When we cry out with truth, the angels, so to speak, forth the leaders. They compel the leaders they control to do in accordance with the truth. There's a tremendous power in crying out. Anyone else? Any other thoughts? Any other things people want to add?
I just want to add, I completely agree with Vega and with you. I feel exactly the same way, and I'm thinking about it all the time. And I just one additional thought. The way the war with Hamas ran from the day one didn't seem like was the right war. It didn't have a purpose, like a real purpose. We didn't take any land. I mean, it was just so many soldiers killed. And if the war continues, just more soldiers will be killed without a clear purpose of this war. So I'm thinking that in a way, it's good that that stopped. How can we continue the war that has no clear purpose?
Interesting. So one of the things they're saying, you know, we hear many rumors. This is all, until now what I was saying was what people were publicly saying. From the rumors, you know, in Netanyahu's government, he needs a majority of the ministers in the parliament to be in his government for his government to last. If he loses them, his government collapses and then there's re-elections, which I don't think wants to happen. And one party, the Otzma Yehudit party of Ben Gvir, I think they resigned. They said they were resigning Sunday because of this deal. And Smotrich, the religious Zionism party, did not resign and had talks with Netanyahu, claiming Netanyahu was saying that after these 6 weeks, they'll go back to fighting. I mean, we don't know. We don't know if that happened. We don't know who knows. But one of these things, which I think is, as per what Chava is saying, is that one of the points he was demanding from Netanyahu was to switch the head of the IDF to a different person, not Halevi, but a person who would more strongly actually accomplish in the war. Now, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows if he really said that to Netanyahu? Who knows if Netanyahu agreed? Who knows if Netanyahu agreed if he's actually going to do it? I mean, we don't know any of these things. We know that if we turn to God, God can make things happen. And yes, we don't want them fighting and fighting and fighting purposelessly. We don't want more Jews to die that way either. And we don't want Hamas to have free reign to have their next October 7th party. So somehow we need to turn to God in a way that God will solve an unsolvable situation. You know, so many times over this year, since October 7th, many times I've told him, you know, a lot of times I like try to give God advice, so to speak, tell him what he should do. I was so clueless. Like Fina said, it's such a complex situation. It's so hard to understand. I kept praying every day. I still pray every day that the Israeli government should have the wisdom to know what to do. I don't know what they should be doing. I don't have any advice if they happen to turn to me. I wouldn't know what to do. But that God should illuminate their eyes so that they should do the right thing. And there has to be a right thing. There has to be a way to solve this. There has to be a way that Jewish lives are safe in a Jewish land, and Jewish lives are safe throughout the world. There has to be a way, and God is very capable. And I think sometimes he's waiting for us. You know, sometimes it's really hard to see God's kind hand. For me, what helps is if I look at my own life and I see examples of things in my own life that seem bad, and later I realize that was actually God's kindness to me. Now, I have such examples. I don't see this in all the situations in my life, but there are quite a number that I clearly see, really I thought as bad, and really I see now that was God's kindness. And I'm sure, I don't have time to ask because I'm so over time, but I'm sure everyone here, or many of you, can look in your lives and see situations that didn't seem good, and that was God's kindness to you. It's easier when you can think like this to have belief in God for this situation as well. Now, we don't apply this to other people and say, well, the same way it looked like I was suffering, but really it was God's kindness, so now it looks like they're suffering. No, we don't say that about other people. But I'm just saying it's a tool to strengthen my belief. It's a tool to strengthen my commitment to do more, to allow God to do his thing and create miracles. You know, I was thinking, you know, living with the times, or I was supposed to live with the times, which is the Torah portion. So in the end of Saturday's Torah portion, the Jews are so upset. Moses comes, we're going to have the redemption, rah, rah, it's so great. He goes to Pharaoh. Pharaoh says, oh, you guys are just slaves. You're having too easy a time being slaves to the kind Pharaoh. Let's make it a little tougher. Let's take away the straw, and now you'll see how hard life should be as a slave. And it was horrible. And the Jews were in such the worst situation. They're being beaten for not fulfilling their quota, which they can't fulfill because they don't have the straw. And Moses says to God, God, why did you make it so bad? Right? This is a question. Moses is saying to God, God, why did you make it so bad? Well, what happens in our Torah portion? Suddenly there's the 10 plagues. From the first plague, it took about 9 more months till the Jews were freed. From the first plague, they were free and they were wealthy because they were the only ones in Egypt that had water. So they sat back wealthy and watched the destruction of Egypt over the next 9 months. So it looked so bad. It looked so black. It looked impossible, cannot be solved. This is an unsolvable situation. And literally, in our Torah portion, suddenly it's solved. Suddenly it all turns around. Suddenly it's great. It's amazing. It was so bad that when Moses said to God, why are you doing this? And God appeared to him, and God quoted the merit of the forefathers, and he revealed himself in this greatest name. And Moses came back, and the Jews couldn't hear it. You know, like you can't hear something, you just are in too much pain to hear it. Someone's telling you all these nice words of comfort, but you can't hear a thing. The Jews couldn't hear a thing. Moses is saying, God himself appeared to me, this highest name of God. God personally promised. God pulled the merit of the forefathers. God's going to destroy the Egyptians. They didn't hear a thing. Nothing penetrated. And then God sent the plagues and everything turned around. I thought that was so relevant to our situation. And it's very interesting because the first plague is taking cold water and making it warm, alive blood, which is a message for us to don't be cold. Don't be shut down. Don't be uncaring. Like I said, if it hurts, cry. Be alive, blood, warmth, life. The first thing he did to destroy the evil of Egypt was strike the coldness. If you want something to happen, you can't be cold. You can't say, okay, it's sad, it's bad. Been many sad, bad things over these years. Oh well. We can't be cold Nile water. We've got to be warm and alive and vibrant like blood. Alive, passionate. And we have to passionately care and passionately do. And I'm saying there are plenty of things we can do. Plenty of things we can do that really do make a difference. You know, if we think, there's just so many things in Torah, like so many things, you know, just going back to the beginning, right? The first verse, the law of Torah would always say that. What's the first verse of the whole Torah? God's creation. And Rashi there, the classical commentator, says, what are we talking about creation for? This isn't a history book. Tell us the laws. And then Rashi writes, prophetically, Rashi writes, because there'll come a time when the people will say, you're robbers. You're robbers for taking Israel. You're robbers. It's not your land. It's the land of the Palestinians. And we'll say, look in the Bible. God created the world. God gives the world to who he wants. And God is giving the land of Israel to the Jewish people. We don't have Israel because of some people in the UN that felt guilty for the Holocaust. We don't have Israel because of the frictions going on and the factions with America and Russia. If we have Israel because of the UN, they gave it to us, they could take it back. We have Israel because of God's word, which any person can see in the Bible. So this is our land, and we have rights to it, and we have to fight for it. It's our land. We have to believe in it. I thought it was very interesting. This is not in recent Torah times, but everything is the hand of God. And just, it seems so relevant that I'm going to share it, even though, again, this was just by God's divine design. I was studying with my daughter for a test that she's having in school. And I was studying with her the book of Jonah. And I'm sure you might know the story of Jonah. It's a very, very dramatic, amazing story. And God is sending Jonah to this very evil city of Nineveh to tell them they better repent, and otherwise God's going to destroy the city. And Jonah didn't want to go because he didn't want them to repent. He wanted them destroyed. They were horrible people, and they were the enemies of the Jews, and they were harming the Jewish people. He didn't want to go. God said no, and God forced his hand in a very dramatic way. Question, why was God trying to save the city of Nineveh? They were horrible people, and they totally deserved to be destroyed. Very interesting answer. Nineveh was the chief city of the country of Ashur, Assyria. And from that country would come somebody who tried to rule the world, Sancherib, the king of Ashur. And Sancherib, the king of Ashur, would go about his way trying to conquer the world, in the course of which he's going to attack both kingdoms of Israel. And God wanted Nineveh saved so Sancherib could have this power, so he could go and attack these Jewish countries to bring them to repentance, to remind them of their need for God, so they would come close to God, so they would trust and believe in God. That's why God wanted to save the city of Nineveh. So to me, it was just so reflective of possibly the situation. God does things that seems, no way. Why would God want that? Things that make us feel very uncomfortable, in pain. Sometimes, I'm not a prophet here, but I'm saying sometimes it's for us to remember him, for us to turn to him, for us to remember his power, for us to know that this might be to inspire our growth, to turn to him more. So if you're in a lot of pain, or if you're in somewhat pain, or if you somewhat feel the potential danger now, don't waste it. Don't waste the pain. Use it to turn to God more deeply and create miracles. Create redemption. That's the point. Everything that we're going through should just push us to turn to God more and to give God the power he gets from our turning to him to create redemption, to create total turnaround of the situation, total miracles, and to create redemption. Any other thoughts? Any other questions or thoughts or reflections anyone else wants to share?
I just want to say that I was weighing hostages here and to release this very bad people. So I couldn't understand which side is more important. And what you said, this piece was missing, that everything has a price. So you cannot buy lives of hostages for any price, certain price. It makes sense. So now it makes sense.
And now you could turn to God. Now you have what to tell him.
Right.
Why God allow October 7th? Didn't protect us from October
Leia, do you
7th.
remember asking me that question before?
I still don't have answer to this.
I don't think you have an answer. I don't think I have an answer. I remember you asking that question. I remember we discussing it once. And I remember what I told you, which obviously wasn't a good answer because it didn't help you at all. But the only thing I can tell you is...
And not only October 7th, but based on our history, it's happened again and again and again. And even we have State of Israel, and we're fighting from the day one, and still fighting and still surrounded with enemies who is willing to kill us.
Absolutely. That's their anthem. From the river to the sea. What do you think they want to do from the
So
river?
if he is so powerful, why he cannot, destroy our enemies?
Because we don't deserve it.
An enemy deserves to live. Oh, okay, great.
No. The enemies, no.
Those unhumans deserve to
those
live.
barbaric inhumans do not deserve anything besides a lot of suffering. They deserve a lot of suffering. That's what they deserve. I trust God because I can't even fathom how much suffering they deserve, and I somehow trust that God's giving it to them. When I think after the Holocaust, God, could you possibly give these people the suffering they deserve? You can. So I'm trusting you that you are, because no human could, but that's okay. You're not limited. They don't deserve anything. And there's no good answer to your question. And the reason why there's no good answer, Leia, is for a very simple reason. If there was a good answer, we would be justifying it. So I do have some answers in my head. I do, actually. But I don't really want to say any of them, because I don't want to justify one drop of any pain that any Jew has ever experienced at the hands of barbaric, inhuman animals. And you're right, I happen to love history, so I know too much Jewish history. And yes, we have a history of martyrs and miracles. You don't have to know any Jewish history to know we're miracles, because the little bit you know already should mean that there shouldn't be any Jew walking the face of the earth, or at least no Jew that knows he's Jewish. There shouldn't be anyone alive today that knows they're Jewish. There's none of the ancient peoples are alive. There's no ancient Romans. There's no ancient Egyptians. No person in Egypt who's Egyptian today is from ancient Egypt. No person in Rome from ancient Rome. Why in the world is the nation that is the most persecuted, and the more you know Jewish history, the more you know the truth of saying the most persecuted, how in the world is there any shred of a remnant? There were the Shomronim. In English, they call them, I think, the Samaritans, or Sumerians. They call them the Sumerians in English. With us, fighting against us at the time of the beginning of the Second Temple. And some of them still live in Israel. There's about, I think, 200, some of them, maybe 300. How are there 15 million Jews in this world that we know about which means far more that we don't know about, and far more that don't even know they're Jews themselves. But far more Jews that didn't apply to any census, didn't claim they're Jewish. How are there so many Jews alive? We are a nation of miracles, and we're a nation of martyrs. We're a nation of martyrs. It says during medieval time, thank you very much, Christianity, the world was washed in the blood of the Jews. I don't think it's a poetic exaggeration. Learn Jewish history. It's not a poetic exaggeration. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible fact. At one point, I was teaching here Jewish history, and I got to a certain point, and somebody in the class told me privately, please stop teaching. It's just too painful. She doesn't want to hear this. And I understood exactly what she meant. I'm like, no problem. We'll change the topic. So do I have answers for you, Leah? I have answers. I'm not going to say any of them. Because any answer I say is almost like saying there's a reason and we can excuse God for this. And I think that's a really bad strategy. We say, God, we don't have any answers. We don't have any reasons. Nothing is acceptable. We're not taking any excuses. And you have to fix the situation. And the only way to fix the situation is bring redemption. Because there's nothing that's going to fix the situation. You know, in Israel, they have an expression. It's in Hebrew. It sounds better in Hebrew than in English. In Hebrew, Hapitaron hayachid Mashiach ben David, which in English translates, doesn't sound as good, the only solution, Mashiach, the Redeemer. It's the only solution. Because this is, as Faina said, a very, very, very complex situation. It's very complex. What's the right? Where's the right? God, you can do the right. So we don't forgive you for October 7th. And by the way, we don't forgive you for the Holocaust. And we don't forgive you for the pogroms. And we don't forgive you for the blood libels. We don't forgive you for Chmielnicki. We don't forgive you for anything. We don't forgive you. We don't forgive you. You have to bring redemption. That's what, God, you have to do. We believe in you. We trust you. We know you love every Jew. And we're willing to give you more, and we need to see it. So it's fine to feel enormous pain in your heart over everything that's happened. Just turn that pain to God and say, God, ultimately it's you, and redeem the Jewish people. Ultimately it's you. So we're not good enough. Guess what, God? You created us. You created us. You gave us very big, lumpy clay feet. You did. We're not perfect. You didn't make us angels. You made us man. We try. We could try harder. We should try harder. If we try harder, will we become perfect? I don't think so. Does God need us to be perfect? I don't think so. Is God waiting for us to be perfect? I don't think so. God, we'll add more psalms. We'll add more charity. We'll add more prayers. We'll light the candles for the Shabbos. We'll do something more for Shabbos. We'll do something more for kosher. We'll do something more to be kind to another person. And God, solve the situation. So I appreciate your question. I think your question is totally valid, and I think you should turn to God, but not turn to God in a sense of like, oh, so why should I bother? No, turn to God and say, so I'm pushing more because I do believe in you, and I do trust you, and I do know that you love every single Jew like your only child, and that's what we need to see. So if you love us like your only child, why are you doing this to us? We're not going to give any answers. We'll do more. And we'll wait and anticipate and be confident in your salvation. Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
I believe it's not the end of the war. I think that God has a plan. I'm positive about it. Like Trump suggested to relocate all Palestinians to Indonesia. Well, yeah, I hope it will happen and they will stay there forever.
Yeah, right.
And we'll take Gaza. So I believe that it will be continued.
Amen. I do too, because I believe in God. Yes, I do too. I believe in God, and God definitely isn't saying, oh, it's so sad. What a tragedy. No, it's not over. And the ones that are going to make sure it's not over are us. Our actions, not Netanyahu's plans, not Trump's plans, our plans. You know, I think I shared once that after, I guess, Gorbachev retired from office, he went on a world trip. I mean, Gorbachev, he was, you know, this hero. And he came to Israel. And when he came to Israel, he met with Professor Yirmiyahu Branover, who was originally from Israel, who was a very, very high level scientist and professor, and had a whole network sustaining Jewish life in Israel under the communists. And Branover told Gorbachev that, when Gorbachev first came to office, his network in Russia, they were very scared. They said, oh, he's a hardliner. Oh, he wants to go back. Whatever the glasnost happened, let's turn back history to real communism. And Branover got a message from the Lubavitcher Rebbe: build housing. The Russian Jews are coming out. And Branover didn't know what to do. I mean, his people in Russia, the people on the ground, are saying Gorbachev is going to make it worse, going to go back. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe is saying, build housing. They're coming out. And being a chassid, a follower of the Rebbe, he built like 3 apartment buildings. How many Jews are going to come out? 3 apartment buildings is probably very extravagant amounts of space. And then Israel, thank God, was flooded with the Russian Jews who came out. So Branover shared this with Gorbachev, and Gorbachev said this is very interesting. He said, because truly, when he did take power, he was planning on going back to real Russia, real communism. Everything they feared was exactly his plans. And what happened? He said, I don't know. It somehow didn't work out that way. The hearts of kings are in the hand of God. Leiv melachim b'sarim biyad Hashem. The hearts of kings are in the hand of God. I totally agree with you, Menucha. 100%. This is not the end, and we're not putting on our mourning shrouds and just, falling into depression, doing nothing because we're stuck. It's going to change. Why? Because God is running the show, and he can put great ideas that will happen in the heart of anyone. I mean, any of us could have predicted what happened in Syria? Anyone? Shortly before, I think it was in September or October, Israel did the most daring mission. They did it second only to Entebbe. In the precision of the raid, they went into a mountain of Syria. It's so complicated, so detailed. It would take me like 15 minutes to explain what they did to completely destroy this facility they had carved into the mountain to produce missiles that they were going to smuggle to Hezbollah to destroy Israel. Anyone could have told Israel, don't bother, don't worry about it. In a few months, Assad's going to be gone and you'll just walk in and take it all over. Like, come on, what fantasy island are you on? Leiv melachim b'sarim biyad Hashem. The hearts of the kings, of the rulers, are in the hand of God. God runs the show. I agree with you, Menucha. It's not over, and it's going to turn around. And it's going to turn around because of us. Because of people that are going to turn to God, going to cry to God, going to add in psalms, add in charity, add in prayer, add in keeping the Sabbath, add in keeping kosher, finding some way to serve God better, and say, God, currency on the table. Do it. Make it happen. And I agree with you. We will see good, 100%, because God is waiting for us to take this pain and passion and channel it into action.